Welcome to This Explainer. I'm absolutely thrilled to be your guide today as we decode fluency. We're going to untangle some of the most subtle, yet incredibly powerful grammar structures in the English language. This is all about moving way beyond textbook correctness and stepping into real, confident, native-level fluency. Let's get into it.
Picture this for a second. You just walked into a room, you're offered a seat, and someone asks you, would you prefer tea or coffee? It's a simple question, right? But how you answer it, how you naturally express your preferences in everyday conversation, speaks volumes about your fluency. Today, we're going to make sure you can answer questions exactly like this with absolute confidence.
Here's our roadmap for today. 1. General versus specific preferences. 2. The spoken English shortcut. 3. Politely influencing other people. 4. Impressions and hypotheticals. And 5. Rules for reason and time. Let's dive right in.
Section 1. General versus specific preferences.
Let's kick things off with the verb prefer when we're just talking about our general everyday lives. You might say, I prefer to live in the country, or you could say, I prefer living in the country. Now, you might be wondering which one is actually better. Well, the great news is that both of these are perfectly correct. There is literally zero difference in meaning.
But what happens when we're comparing two different options? This is where the underlying formulas really matter. If you're comparing nouns, you just use to. So I prefer tea to coffee. Easy enough. If you're using ing verbs, again, you use to, as in I prefer driving to traveling. But listen closely to this third situation. If you use base verbs with to, the conjunction completely changes. You have to say I prefer to drive rather than travel. See how that works?
Okay, here is the absolutely crucial distinction. Everything we just talked about was for general big picture likes. But what about a specific choice, like something you want right this second? The rules totally change. For a specific choice, we use would prefer to do. And crucially, we never ever use an ing form here. So if I ask if we should take the train right now, you would say, I'd prefer to go by car.
Moving right along to Section 2, the spoken English shortcut.
Would rather. This means the exact same thing as would prefer to do, but honestly, it is the ultimate native speaker shortcut. It's just what people actually say. But there's a golden rule you have to remember. After would rather, we always use the infinitive verb without the word to.
Let's hear how that sounds in practice. You could say, I'd prefer to go by car. That's formal and entirely correct. But then you have the native speaker shortcut. I'd rather go by car. It just flows so beautifully, doesn't it? Just avoid the classic trap. You know, the one where people accidentally add an extra word and say, I'd rather to go. Definitely skip the to.
Which brings us to Section 3, politely influencing other people. This one is a real game changer.
What's truly fascinating here is the grammar logic behind telling someone else what to do without sounding bossy. Start with I'd rather you, then add a past tense verb like came or did and apply it to a present or future situation. I know it sounds a bit counterintuitive, but if someone asks, shall I stay here? You don't say, I'd rather you come. You say, I'd rather you came with us. It's like we're using the past tense to politely control the present. And what if you need to just completely shut down a request? Well, this is your ultimate tool. Imagine someone asks, do you mind if I smoke in here? You simply look right at them and say, I'd rather you didn't. That's it. It is polite, it's totally socially acceptable, but it's an incredibly firm rejection.
Okay, Section 4, impressions and hypotheticals. How do we talk about the way things look or feel? We use the phrases as if or as though. You pull these out when you're comparing reality with an impression. And here's a quick real-world tip for you. As if and as though are completely interchangeable. In fact, in super casual, everyday speech, you'll often hear native speakers just bypass them entirely and use the word like instead. Think about it like this. If you're looking at an old, crumbling building, you aren't giving a guaranteed structural assessment, right? You're just giving your impression. So you'd exclaim, that house looks as if it's going to fall down. It adds this wonderful layer of dramatic flair to your storytelling. We can totally use the structure to describe behavior, too. For instance, they looked at me as if I was mad. They reacted like your idea was crazy. Or you can use it for completely unreal situations, like he ran as if he were running for his life. Obviously, he wasn't really in danger. But notice again how we're reaching for those past tense verbs here, even when we're talking about a present feeling or a completely hypothetical reality.
And finally, we arrive at Section 5, rules for reason and time.
Let's talk about the word as. It is an absolute chameleon. It totally changes its meaning based on how you use it. Sometimes as is used for a reason, meaning exactly the same thing as because. Saying as it was a public holiday, the shops were shut, instantly sounds so much more fluent than always relying on because. But other times, as is used for time. I watched her as she opened the letter means these two actions were happening at the exact same time.
I highly recommend taking a mental screenshot of the matrix we're looking at because it perfectly breaks down the confusing trio of as, when, and while. It's like a giant puzzle, but the rules are actually super clear. Use as for exact simultaneous actions, like George arrived as Sue left. You use when for sequential actions, one after the other. When I got home, I had a bath. And you use while for a background action. The doorbell rang while we were asleep. Keeping these distinct will literally elevate your spoken English overnight.
But before we wrap up today, there is one vital exception you've got to know. You absolutely cannot use as when talking about someone's age or a fixed situation. You have to say, Angela got married when she was 23. Trying to squeeze an as in there is a really common mistake, so make sure to lock that rule in for good.
And just like that, our masterclass comes to a close. From politely rejecting requests with a simple, I'd rather you didn't, to mastering that elusive little word as, you now have a brand new toolkit of native speaker shortcuts. The English language is yours to command. So, with these grammatical game changers right in your back pocket, how would you rather speak tomorrow? Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer, and I'll see you next time.